Like I mentioned before, we're going to turn this into our own service, so we don't have to use it that way. I mean, it's still going to be injected, but we're going to use it in our own way. So I'm going to delete all this, delete this guy, remove that import as well. All right. And I want to create another service. So let's go back here, and in our service folder, I'm going to copy this file and then just paste it here. And I need to rename this to notification service. So we're going to say notification service.ts. The first thing I want to do is to remove everything in here. So select everything, delete, and remove all these imports that we probably won't be using. And we need to rename this to notification service. Again, we could use the CLI to do this, but I was being lazy. Now we're gonna actually do exactly what they said in the documentation. So we're gonna create a private read only, and that's gonna be notifier, and we're gonna give it a type of notification service. So notification service, it's actually notifier service. Okay, so that's supposed to come from the library that we just installed. Now we need to create a constructor. So constructor, we're gonna pass in the notifier service. So notifier service, which is going to be of type notifier service, and we need to do an assignment. So we're going to say this dot notifier, set it equal to the notifier service, and it's supposed to be that one. And this is misspelled. This is supposed to be service, notifier service, and this should also be changed to notifier service. Okay, so now what we want to do is to define some methods. So I'm going to say on default. Okay, so I'm defining this method inside of this service, and all it takes is a message, which is going to be a string. Okay, so it's going to take a message that's going to be a string. Return type is void, and then all we have to do is to call the notifier and then call notify, and then we're going to pass in the default. Let's pass in the string for now, so that's going to be the default, and then we need to pass in the message, and we already have the message, so we're going to call the message. Another thing I want to do is to create an enum for the type of the message, so that we can have this in a more clean way. So I'm going to go outside of the class, and I'm going to create an enum, and I'm going to call it maybe type, because it makes more sense. And then I'm going to pass in the different types. So the first one is default. So default, and we're going to set it equal to a string default. So default, and then I'm going to copy this again and then paste it, and this time this is going to be the info. So info, and then change this to info, paste it one more time. This is going to be the success, and then we have warning, the last one is error. Change this to error. So we have all of the different types that we can have, so we can just use that type. So I can say type, paste it in here, and then call the default. And I'm gonna put this on a no line so you guys can see better. All right, so we have all the different enums here. So now we can have a function for all the different types. So I'm gonna copy this, or just highlight it and do this. And we want the on success, so we're gonna say on success, and just change the type to success. Do this one more time, and let's call this on info, and we just need to change the type again to info. We're gonna do this again, and this is gonna be on warning. Change the type again to warning. And we're going to copy this one last time. And then we're going to call this on error. All right, so I'm defining my own function and I'm calling the service. So what we can do now is to just use this notification service inside of our class. And all we have to do is to pass in the message. We don't have to worry about this type or whatever, because this implementation is going to work. So I'm going to copy this name, and I can pretty much close this. I don't need to be here anymore, and close all this. And we need to go inside of the main component, and we're just going to inject it here just like a regular service. So I'm going to say private, and then pass it here, and make sure you import this. And I'm going to change this name to notifier. Okay, so we're going to call this notifier. So now all I have to do is to just call this notifier and then, pass in on default or on error or something. So after we got the successful response, which is going to happen here, we're going to say this that notifier, and you can see that we have our own method. So I'm going to be using just the default and the error in case I get an error, but feel free to use any one of these. And you can also define your own, because right now we're using our own service, so you don't have to be stuck with the ones that you got from the library. You can define your own, but in my case I'm just going to use the default, and then I'm going to pass in the message. And remember, the message is coming from the response, so I'm going to say response.message. There should be a message property on the response, and I'm going to copy this and then go down. So when we get an error as well, remember this error is a string. We can also show it to the user. So I'm going to pass it here and then pass the error as my message because it's a string. And then we're going to call on error. So I'm going to copy this line, and we're going to do this for all the other functions. So scroll down. We can do it anytime, like maybe after this occurs, then we can do this. After we save the server, then we can do this as well. And when we filter, we can pass in this message as well. And when we delete, we can pass in the same message. All right, whatever message we get from the backend is gonna be printed out here. You can put it on this method here as well, but you're gonna have to come up with a message if you want. Like we can do something like do report downloaded or something. So that's up to you. You can do it in any function in this class. And then we're gonna do the same for the error. So let's just go up and we're gonna copy this line, and then we're gonna do it for all the errors. So whenever there's an error, we wanna show the error as well. Show the error, and let's go down. Show the error here, and we don't have an error. Well, an error can happen here, but we're not gonna catch this error that way. Remember, this is coming from a backend call. So now I'm gonna go ahead and go back to the app. And if I, for instance, filter this, you can see the message at the bottom. Every time I take an action, the message is going to appear. And if I try to print, you can see the message report downloaded. I'm going to close that for now. And if I ping a server, for example, ping success, this is going to be an error. So let's see the error message, ping fail. You can see that the ping fail is right there. So everything is working as expected, and feel free to go ahead and test this more, but in my case that's gonna work for me. I already know that it works, but you can go ahead and look at it and understand the flow and then test it more.